So it's one thing that's always been on my mind. I was talking to this one female. I remember it was in Fort Hood because I was military, 20 years active duty, retired now. It was a great time. But I was talking to this one soldier, and I specifically remember her saying, "Yeah, I believe in God," and I was like, "Okay, that's cool. Yeah, cool. I'm believing God too." And I started talking to her about stuff about God, just having casual conversation. And she's like, "Oh, wait, you're a Christian Christian." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You're a Christian Christian, as in you're like living Christian. See, I just believe in God, but I ain't living Christian. Like I'm out here in this world. Like I'm still doing everything else." And so she admitted that, but yeah, I'm a Christian Christian. So let's talk about being a Christian or a Christian's Christian. So with me, you would think I was just born with the Bible being beat over my head and everything else. Not the case. Actually, I was raised as a Christian, but I knew of God, but I didn't quite follow God. And kind of like how she was, right? And it's not to say I'm better, we just have our different walks. So I remember going to church and probably around 12, and I had this one dream, and it was a visual of something that was occurring in Revelations. And when I spoke to the woman at church, she looked at me with disgust and was like, "How can you have such a dream? I can't even have that kind of dream. And I'm here in the church. Like, who are you to have that kind of dream?" And I'm a kid. I'm a kid. And she told me that. So from that point forward, I actually walked away from the church. And believe it or not, when I walked away from the church folk, that's when I actually discovered God. So it turns out he just wanted me to discover him for myself the whole time. So when I was away from that church, it was a Baptist church, right? Not all of them are created equal, but I'm just giving you guys this for context. When I walked away from that church, from that point forward, when people asked me if I believed in God, I said yes. And they asked me, was I a Christian? I say, yes, I'm a Christian. When they asked me what denomination, I said no denomination. So what this it allowed me to walk into all these different churches and learn the Bible from different point of views. So this approach was interesting in that I learned there are very bad churches out there, like very bad churches, which are only focused on collecting money. I'm telling you, that offering tray went around 12 times before the sermon even started. And the preacher is decked out in gold necklaces, gold rings and all this stuff, right? And it's like the definition of hypocrite. They're talking about money. They're talking about, hey, y'all need to be given to the church. It's not like a one-time thing. I mean, like when they first started talking, it's probably a good 15 minutes of talking about why you should donate and how bad you should feel about not donating before they even get to the message about God. You see what I'm saying? Like they running people off from the church before the sermon even started. So with that being said, this is why people look at the church and be like, "Hey, man, a lot of them people are hypocritical." And this is what the Bible is saying when he's saying you're crucifying Christ all over again by doing this kind of thing. But back to the story. So I found God by ultimately just saying, forget all this. I'm just going to read the Bible for myself. And that's when I realized that people were taking certain verses out of context. Certain churches were taking verses out of context to use it to validate their talking points. For instance, just this is just an example. The earth was created in 6 days, so therefore the aliens are going to come and invade earth in 3 weeks. See, that doesn't make any sense. But to other people who haven't read the Bible, they don't know that doesn't make any sense, right? And they're not following along in the Bible. They're just going off of what this pastor's saying. Now, was that an extreme example? Yes. But does stuff like that happen? Yes. So ultimately, only once I went back to reading the Bible for myself that was I able to get closer to God. And then I found myself falling asleep as I read the Bible a lot. So then I went audio Bible. Bible is app if you're interested. And I've just been listening to it from Old Testament to New and becoming sharper in the word. And I found God like I've never found him before. And it was at that point that I knew, I was like, oh crap, I am going to hell in flaming underwear because I knew of God, but I didn't follow God at that time. You see what I'm saying? So I thought just me knowing of God was going to get me into heaven. Like, hey, I know there's a God. I know, Jesus is his son, but I ain't living nothing like what they talking about. So, which brings me into another discussion. Usually when I talk about this, a lot of people say, hey, Jesus is black, white, Mexican. And they get caught up on that, right? On how Jesus looked. So then I talked to God about this, and he said they're distracting themselves from his central message. And he put it to me like this: in that day when they show up to heaven and they stand before God, say he's purple, say he's green, say he's whatever, right? Say they get how he looks correct. Oh, he's African. Oh, he's Chinese. Oh, he's so and so. And he says, congratulations, you realize how I looked. But did you do what I said? And this is when it's going to all dawn on them that they didn't make it into heaven, because they realized and figured out how he looked instead of focusing on what really mattered, which was how he said to live. You see what I'm saying? So this is why I don't get into discussions like this with anyone outside the church or church folk. So you notice I specifically say church folk because a lot of church folk think that religion alone, dressing in that fancy costume, I call it, for Easter, that one Sunday, they think that alone is going to get them into heaven. Listen, it don't work that way, right? You can't finesse God like that. So why do you say this, Jamal? So I'm saying it for this reason. Understand, right, that to love God is to truly love God. You can't half step it. You can't be lukewarm, right? I ain't saying be perfect, right? And live a life full of without sin, right? Because that's kind of impossible. We're literally born into sin, which is why we need Jesus to cleanse us of that sin so that we can get into heaven. But I'm not saying just go out here and freely sin either. But what I'm saying is try to live a life that is pleasing to God. We understand you're going to fail in your walk. Your failure doesn't condemn you in the eyes of God. You're still breathing. He's blessed you with life. He's blessed you with another day. I'm a perfect example. Like I mess up a lot, but for some reason, guys like Jamal, I still love you, and I can still use you. And here I am. He's using me, and I love it. I'm very humbled because I don't deserve it. None of us do. But what I'm saying is this: don't get caught up on what church folk say you should be doing, or how you should look, or how you should dress to walk into this church. Only thing you have to do is seek out Jesus. Understand the real church is your body. Your body is the temple now. Jesus, once you accept him in, he resides there. Your body is there. The church is for sharpening, iron sharpens iron. Fellow communal worship. That's how it's supposed to be. But it's turned into a political ring. Not all churches are guilty of this, just some. You'll know them when you see them. Trust me. Your spirit will tell you it'll be red flag as soon as you walk in. So when you're dealing with church folk, you're dealing with going to church, you're trying to find that perfect church. Ask God to lead you where he wants you to be. And before you go to that church, try reading scripture for yourself some. Maybe you'll like it. And maybe it'll help you with choosing which church best aligns with your values. So, though there are different denominations, there aren't really any denomination that's better than others. So look at it like this. When he says the church body, some churches are the hand, some churches operate as the feet, some churches operate as the arms, some as the head. It's all part of the spiritual body of Christ, right? So it's up to you where you want to be. But if you go to a church and you're looking for a church and they tell you Jesus Christ is not Lord, and they actively teach principles which are against God, leave that church fast. Say nothing. You don't even have to say bye and just go. Go somewhere to where you know it's aligned with God's values. And my final word of wisdom in this is this: don't let others stop you in your walk with God. Don't let your husband, don't let your wife, don't let your kids, because in that day, it's only you going to be standing with God. He's going to ask you, well done, good and faithful servant. What have you done to help people know of my name and uplift my kingdom? How many have you brought to me? How many have you spoke to of me using your social media platforms? I gave you 1 million subscribers. How many times have you said, Jesus is my Lord? I gave you all the video views. How many times have you lifted me up for doing so? Was it a sentence? Did you wear a shirt that says God is King? Sticker, something? Don't get caught slipping in that day. He doesn't require you to do much. Only thing he requires you to do is stay faithful to him, and he will stay faithful to you, even when we don't deserve it. If you guys like this video, comment or subscribe below. Make sure you like the video because it helps it to reach more people in this audience. And I'll see you guys again next time. Thanks for watching.